Welcome to the First Line Library. I'm Jordan, and today we're going over Bookish hot takes. Let's get into it. Alright, so today I thought I would jump into some of Reddit's biggest hot takes in the book community right now. So I compiled a list of 10 that I thought were really good and interesting. Some I agree with, some I disagree with, some I kind of ride the fence on. So let's get into it. So starting off with number 1, people read ebooks more out of cost than preference. This I'm going to have to disagree with because people have different circumstances. It's not always just about the cost. It's about, you travel a lot. So having a Kindle or a Kobo is just the most convenient. Some people prefer to have a Kindle or Kobo in their hands versus an actual physical book. And yeah, sometimes it is about cost. For myself, I do like to jump into a book when I hear about it. And if I can't find a physical copy and the price is really good on that ebook, I'm probably going to get it. So I mostly disagree with a couple caveats there, but mostly disagree. All right, so number 2 is required reading in schools shouldn't only be comprised of classics. This I 100% agree with. Growing up in school, with middle school, high school, and even into college, it was always about the classics. And I think this is just silly because you don't really get to explore genre as much with just reading the classics. Just because it's not a literary fiction author who is, Hemingway or Lee Harper or F. Scott Fitzgerald or, and so on. Genre to me is more important than just sticking within literary fiction. So I'm going to have to agree with this one. I think schools should be jumping into sci-fi and fantasy, mystery and thriller, and even horror too, because come on, Stephen King. Who doesn't love some Stephen King? So moving on to number 3, books do not need to be doorstops. In fact, I prefer books 400 pages or less. This I mostly agree with. I think nowadays, specifically in fantasy and even sci-fi, books are just getting too big. And I do think that, the further you go on in a series, you're adding in more POVs to of certain characters, and you don't want to lessen your main character's POV. So the book tends to get a little bit longer. That I'm okay with, but I just think it coming right out of the gate with, 700, 800, 900, 1,000 page books all the time, it's just a little too much, and it just kind of clogs your reading list. And I think there are just so many books that are even 100 to 200 pages long that are really worth reading. So I mostly agree with this one. And I think some people should try to find those smaller page counts and word count books. I think you'll really enjoy them. So moving on to number 4, I will not buy a book with a hideous cover. This is kind of interesting. I sort of agree with this. I am a visual person, so if I see a cover that just looks disgusting, looks gross, is poorly done, I tend to not want to even pick it up. However, that's when I jump onto YouTube or on a Goodreads or whatever to look up those reviews, to look up those people that have already read it, to see if it is something that I do like. And you know what? Over the years, different covers get made, so I may not really want that cover of that book on the shelf, but it may be an awesome book, so don't count it out. So this is a sort of agree, sort of disagree one. So, to each their own. Number 5 is, I find the tropification of literature to be extremely problematic and keeps new readers from exploring new genres and plots. This I mostly disagree with because tropes are in every book. Tropes are what makes books. You may not love a certain trope, but tropes are there for a reason. And if you love mystery and thriller, read mystery and thriller. If you do feel like you want to venture out, find a fantasy book that has some mystery and some thriller in it, or venture into horror. It's not wrong to always stay within what feels more comfortable if that's what you really enjoy. So yeah, check out different genres, but Tropes are there for a reason, and you like them or you hate them. So that's kind of what you stick with. So yeah, mostly disagree with this one. So moving on to number 6, you can dislike something and recognize its genius. This I do agree with. There are a lot of books that I just don't like that people love. They're 5-star reads for people. But I do recognize that there is something about that book that really sparks something for people. It may just not be for me. I know one of the big books, right now is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. People love to love it and people love to hate it. I think this is a good example of recognizing the genius in something that you dislike. I personally really enjoyed The Name of the Wind, but there are those who did not like it, but they do recognize that it had a spark, it said something, and it worked for some people. Okay, so moving on to number 7, every physical book should come with an ebook copy or at least a steep discount for the ebook copy. This is kind of interesting, but I would have to agree. This is something that I've thought about for quite a while is, I'm spending, $30 on a new hardcover release. I would love to have an ebook copy of that as well, because I'm the type of person who likes to take care of my books. And yes, you're supposed to read them. You're supposed to open them and read them. But I don't always love taking my physical copies to certain places. Sometimes on vacation, if we're going to the beach with a family, I don't really want to ruin my book. And I really wouldn't want to spend $30 on another copy if it gets totally destroyed. So I think having, a free ebook code attached to that hardcover, or at least having a steep discount would be beneficial. I don't know how that would affect, publishers and authors, but I think this is something that could potentially be good for readers. I think it would get more people into buying books too. For me, I would rather spend the $30 and get the hardcover and the ebook rather than spend $15, $20 on that ebook alone. So that's just me. I think I would tend to agree with this, but there might be some issues that need to be looking into. So who knows? Maybe it's in the future. All right, number 8. Reading Dan Brown is better than reading nothing. I don't think this is specifically calling out Dan Brown, but just the fact that reading something is better than reading nothing, I do agree with. Now, there are a lot of genres that I don't particularly like, and some I just feel like aren't worth reading. But reading is reading. It's something that we are meant to do. It's something that's ingrained in our brain. So read it if you got it, and hand it to someone else to read it. So I agree with this one. Number 9, covers are overrated and it should start with regular paper. Disagree. Covers are amazing. They set the tone for the book. And there are people who make a living off of designing covers, designing the artwork, and they should be recognized. They are almost as important, if not as important, as the author themselves. They conceptualize the visualization of the author. So I disagree. Covers are awesome. All right, so number 10, last one on my list, and I think we all know where this is headed. Listening to audiobooks is not reading. I agree and I disagree. Yes, by definition, listening is not reading, but they are both comprehension. And I think that's really what the key here is, comprehension. Passing those stories down from generation to generation. Where would we be if we didn't have our grandparents and their parents and generations before passing down those amazing stories? I don't think we would even have a lot of those stories. A lot of our history would never have been told and written down. So I don't think it's just about reading. I think comprehension is really the key. So if you really do just love reading books, I encourage you, find your favorite book, find the audiobook, and give it a try. You really may love it. For me, I love reading that first book and then going back and listening to the audiobook. And that's kind of usually what my reread is listening to the audiobook. And there's times where I do both in tandem and I love it. So, everyone has their preference, but I do think that it's not just about who can read and who can't read, or if you only love reading or if you only love listening to audiobooks. I think it's about passing those stories on however you can, whether it's orally or written down or even visually. So, hey, that's my hot take on that one. So do with that what you will. Those were 10 really good hot takes. Some I disagreed with, some I agreed with, some I was kind of 50-50 on. But we all have our opinion, and there's nothing wrong with that. So, hey, thanks again for taking the time to hear what I had to say. I'm Jordan. I'd love to talk to you down in the comments. Also, share this video out to your friends. It really would help my channel grow, and I really appreciate it. So, take care and God bless.